the 8th chapter, titled The Leader of the Lions. John Dolittle now became dreadfully awfully busy. He found hundreds and thousands of monkeys sick. Gorillas, orangutans, chimpanzees, dog-faced baboons, marmosets, gray monkeys, red ones, all kinds, and many had died. The first thing he did was to separate the sick ones from the well ones. Then he got Chi-Chi and his cousin to build him a little house of grass. The next thing, he made all the monkeys who were still well come and be vaccinated. And for 3 days and 3 nights, the monkeys kept coming from the jungles and the valleys and the hills to the little house of grass, where the doctor sat all day and all night, vaccinating and vaccinating. Then he had another house made, a big one, with lots of beds in it, and he put all the sick ones in this house. But so many were sick, there were not enough well ones to do the nursing. So he sent messages to the other animals, like the lions and the leopards and the antelopes, to come and help with the nursing. But the leader of the lions was a very proud creature, and when he came to the doctor's big house full of beds, he seemed angry and scornful. "Do you dare to ask me, sir?" he said, glaring at the doctor. "Do you dare to ask me, the king of beasts, to wait on a lot of dirty monkeys? Why, I wouldn't even eat them between meals." Although the lion looked very terrible, the doctor tried hard not to seem afraid of him. "I didn't ask you to eat them," he said quietly, "and besides, they're not dirty. They've all had a bath this morning. Your coat looks as though it needed brushing. Badly. Now listen and I'll tell you something. The day may come when the lions get sick, and if you don't help the other animals now, the lions may find themselves left all alone when they are in trouble. That often happens to proud people." "The lions are never in trouble. They only make trouble," said the leader, turning up his nose, and he stalked away into the jungle, feeling he had been rather smart and clever. Then the leopards got proud too and said they wouldn't help. And then, of course, the antelopes, although they were too shy and timid to be rude to the doctor like the lion, they pawed the ground and smiled foolishly, and said they had never been nurses before. And now the poor doctor was worried frantic, wondering where he could get help enough to care for all these thousands of monkeys in bed. But the leader of lions, when he got back to his den, saw his wife, the queen lioness, come running out to meet him with her hair untidy. "One of the cubs won't eat," she said. "I don't know what to do with him. He hasn't taken a thing since last night." And she began to cry and shake with nervousness, for she was a good mother, even though she was a lioness. So the leader went into his den and looked at his children, 2 very cunning little cubs lying on the floor, and one of them seemed quite poorly. Then the lion told his wife, quite proudly, just what he had said to the doctor. And she got so angry, she nearly drove him out of the den. "You never did have a grain of sense," she screamed. "All the animals from here to the Indian Ocean are talking about this wonderful man, and how he can cure any kind of sickness, and how kind he is. The only man in the whole world who can talk the language of the animals. And now, when we have a sick baby on our hands, you must go and offend him. You great booby! Nobody but a fool is ever rude to a good doctor. You—" and she started pulling her husband's hair. "Go back to that white man at once," she yelled, "and tell him you're sorry, and take all the other empty-headed lions with you, and those stupid leopards and antelopes. Then do everything the doctor tells you. Work hard, and perhaps he will be kind enough to come and see the cub later. Now, be off. Hurry, I tell you. You're not fit to be a father." And she went into the den next door where another mother lion lived and told her all about it. So the leader of the lions went back to the doctor and said, "I happened to be passing this way and thought I'd look in. Got any help yet?" "No," said the doctor, "I haven't, and I'm dreadfully worried." "Help's pretty hard to come by these days," said the lion. "Animals don't seem to want to work any more. You can't blame them in a way." "Well, seeing you're in difficulties, I don't mind doing what I can just to oblige you, so long as I don't have to wash the creatures. And I have told all the other hunting animals to come and do their share. The leopard should be here any minute now. Oh, and by the way, we've got a sick cub at home. I don't think there's much the matter with him myself, but the wife is anxious. If you are around that way this evening, you might take a look at him, will you?" Then the doctor was very happy, for all the lions and the leopards and the antelopes and the giraffes and the zebras, all the animals of the forests and the mountains and the plains, came to help him in his work. There were so many of them that he had to send some away, and kept only the cleverest. And now, very soon, the monkeys began to get better. At the end of a week, the big house full of beds was half empty, and at the end of the second week, the last monkey had got well. Then the doctor's work was done, and he was so tired he went to bed and slept for 3 days without even turning over. End of the 8th chapter.
The 9th chapter, titled The Monkey's Council. Chee-Chee stood outside the doctor's door, keeping everybody away till he woke up. Then John Dolittle told the monkeys that he must now go back to Puddleby. They were very surprised at this, for they had thought that he was going to stay with them forever. And that night all the monkeys got together in the jungle to talk it over. And the chief chimpanzee rose up and said, "Why is it the good man is going away? Is he not happy here with us?" But none of them could answer him. Then the grand gorilla got up and said, "I think we should all go to him and ask him to stay. Perhaps if we make him a new house and a bigger bed, and promise him plenty of monkey servants to work for him and make life pleasant for him, perhaps then he will not wish to go." Then Chee-Chee got up, and all the others whispered, "Shh! Look, Chee-Chee! The great traveller is about to speak." And Chee-Chee said to the other monkeys, "My friends, I am afraid it is useless to ask the doctor to stay. He owes money in Puddleby, and says he must go back and pay it." The monkeys asked him, "What is money?" Then Chee-Chee told them that in the land of the white men you could get nothing without money, you could do nothing without money, that it was almost impossible to live without money. And some of them asked, "But can you not even eat and drink without paying?" But Chee-Chee shook his head, and then he told them that even he, when he was with the organ-grinder, had been made to ask the children for money. And the chief chimpanzee turned to the oldest orangutan and said, "Cousin, surely these men be strange creatures. Who would wish to live in such a land? My gracious, how paltry! Then Chi-Chi said, "When we were coming to you, we had no boat to cross the sea in, and no money to buy food to eat on our journey. So a man lent us some biscuits, and we said we would pay him when we came back. And we borrowed a boat from a sailor, but it was broken on the rocks when we reached the shores of Africa. Now the doctor says he must go back and get the sailor another boat, because the man was poor and his ship was all he had." And the monkeys were all silent for a while, sitting quite still upon the ground and thinking hard. At last the biggest baboon got up and said, "I do not think we ought to let this good man leave our land till we have given him a fine present to take with him, so that he may know we are grateful for all that he has done for us." And a little tiny red monkey who was sitting up in a tree shouted down, "I think that too." And then they all cried out, making a great noise, "Yes, yes, let us give him the finest present a white man ever had." Now they began to wonder and ask one another what would be the best thing to give him. And one said, 50 bags of coconuts, and another 100 bunches of bananas. "At least he shall not have to buy his fruit in the land where you pay to eat." But Chi-Chi told them that all these things would be too heavy to carry so far, and would go bad before half was eaten. "If you want to please him," he said, "give him an animal. You may be sure he will be kind to it. Give him some rare animal that they have not got in the menageries." And the monkeys asked him, "What are menageries?" Then Chi-Chi explained to them that menageries were places in the land of the white men, where animals were put in cages for people to come and look at. And the monkeys were very shocked, and said to one another, "These men are like thoughtless young ones, stupid and easily amused. Shh! It is a prison he means." So then they asked Chi-Chi what rare animal it could be that they could give the doctor, one the white man had not seen before. And the mayor of the marmosets asked, "Have they got an iguana over there?" But Chi-Chi said, "Yes, there is one in the London Zoo." And another asked, "Have they got an okapi?" But Chi-Chi said, "Yes, in Belgium, where my organ grinder took me 5 years ago. They had an okapi in a big city they called Antwerp." And another asked, "Have they got a push-me-pull-you?" Then Chi-Chi said, "No, no white man has ever seen a push-me-pull-you. Let us give him that." End of the 9th chapter.
The 10th chapter, The Rarest Animal of All. Push-me-pull-yous are now extinct. That means there aren't any more. But long ago, when Dr. Dolittle was alive, there were some of them still left in the deepest jungles of Africa. And even then they were very, very scarce. They had no tail, but a head at each end, and sharp horns on each head. They were very shy and terribly hard to catch. The black men get most of their animals by sneaking up behind them while they're not looking. But you could not do this with the push-me-pull-you, because no matter which way you came towards him, he was always facing you. And besides, only one half of him slept at a time. The other head was always awake and watching. This is why they were never caught and never seen in zoos. Though many of the greatest huntsmen and the cleverest menagerie keepers spent years of their lives searching through the jungles in all weathers for push-me-pull-yous. Not a single one had ever been caught. Even then, years ago, he was the only animal in the world with 2 heads. Well, the monkeys set out hunting this animal through the forest. And after they had gone a good many miles, one of them found peculiar footprints near the edge of a river, and they knew that a push-me-pull-you must be very near that spot. Then they went along the bank of the river a little way, and they saw a place where the grass was high and thick, and they guessed that he was in there. So they all joined hands and made a great circle round the high grass. The push-me-pull-you heard them coming, and he tried hard to break through the ring of monkeys, but he couldn't do it. When he saw that it was no use trying to escape, he sat down and waited to see what they wanted. They asked him if he would go with Dr. Dolittle and be put on show in the land of the white men. But he shook both his heads hard and said, "Certainly not." They explained to him that he would not be shut up in a menagerie, but would just be looked at. They told him that the doctor was a very kind man, but hadn't any money, and people would pay to see a 2-headed animal, and the doctor would get rich, and could pay for the boat he had borrowed to come to Africa in. But he answered, "No. You know how shy I am. I hate being stared at." And he almost began to cry. Then for 3 days they tried to persuade him. At the end of the 3rd day he said he would come with them and see what kind of a man the doctor was first. So the monkeys travelled back with the push-me-pull-you, and when they came to where the doctor's little house of grass was, they knocked on the door. The duck, who was packing the trunk, said, "Come in." And Chee-Chee very proudly took the animal inside and showed him to the doctor. "What in the world is it?" asked John Dolittle, gazing at the strange creature. "Lord save us!" cried the duck. "How does it make up its mind?" "It doesn't look to me as though it had any," said Jip the dog. "This, doctor," said Chee-Chee, "is the push-me-pull-you, the rarest animal of the African jungles, the only 2-headed beast in the world. Take him home with you, and your fortune's made. People will pay any money to see him." "But I don't want any money," said the doctor. "Yes, you do," said Dab-Dab the duck. "Don't you remember how we had to pinch and scrape to pay the butcher's bill in Puddleby? And how are you going to get the sailor the new boat you spoke of, unless we have the money to buy it?" "I was going to make him one," said the doctor. "Oh, do be sensible," cried Dab-Dab. "Where would you get all the wood and the nails to make one with? And besides, what are we going to live on? We shall be poorer than ever when we get back. Chee-Chee's perfectly right. Take the funny-looking thing along, do." "Well, perhaps there is something in what you say," murmured the doctor. "It certainly would make a nice new kind of pet. But does the, what do you call it, really want to go abroad?" "Yes, I'll go," said the push-me-pull-you, who saw at once from the doctor's face that he was a man to be trusted. "You have been so kind to the animals here, and the monkeys tell me that I am the only one who will do. But you must promise me that if I do not like it in the land of the white men, you will send me back." "Why, certainly, of course," said the doctor. "Excuse me, surely you are related to the deer family, are you not?" "Yes," said the push-me-pull-you. to the Abyssinian gazelles and the Asiatic chamois on my mother's side. My father's great-grandfather was the last of the unicorns. Most interesting, murmured the doctor, and he took a book out of the trunk which Dab-Dab was packing and began turning the pages. Let us see if Buffon says anything. I notice, said the duck, that you only talk with one of your mouths. Can't the other head talk as well? Oh, yes, said the Push-Me-Pull-You, but I keep the other mouth for eating, mostly. In that way I can talk while I'm eating without being rude. Our people have always been very polite. When the packing was finished and everything was ready to start, the monkeys gave a grand party for the doctor, and all the animals of the jungle came. And they had pineapples, and mangoes, and honey, and all sorts of good things to eat and drink. After they had all finished eating, the doctor got up and said, My friends, I am not clever at speaking long words after dinner like some men, and I have just eaten many fruits and much honey. But I wish to tell you that I am very sad at leaving your beautiful country. Because I have things to do in the land of the white men, I must go. And after I have gone, remember never to let the flies settle on your food before you eat it, and do not sleep on the ground when the rains are coming. I hope you will all live happily ever after. When the doctor stopped speaking and sat down, all the monkeys clapped their hands a long time, and said to one another, Let it be remembered always among our people that he sat and ate with us here under the trees, for surely he is the greatest of men. And the grand gorilla, who had the strength of 7 horses in his hairy arms, rolled a great rock up to the head of the table and said, This stone for all time shall mark the spot. And even to this day, in the heart of the jungle, that stone still is there. And monkey mothers, passing through the forest with their families, still point down at it from the branches and whisper to their children, Shh! There it is! Look! Where the good white man sat and ate food with us in the year of the great sickness. Then, when the party was over, the doctor and his pets started out to go back to the seashore, and the monkeys went with him as far as the edge of their country, carrying his trunks and bags, to see him off. End of the 10th chapter.
The 11th chapter, titled The Black Prince. By the edge of the river they stopped and said farewell. This took a long time, because all those thousands of monkeys wanted to shake John Dolittle by the hand. Afterwards, when the doctor and his pets were going on alone, Polynesia said, We must tread softly and talk low as we go through the land of the Jolliginki. If the king should hear us, he will send his soldiers to catch us again, for I am sure he's still very angry over the trick I played on him. What I am wondering, said the doctor, is where we're going to get another boat to go home in. Oh well, perhaps we'll find one lying about on the beach that nobody's using. Never lift your foot till you come to this stile. One day, while they were passing through a very thick part of the forest, Chi-Chi went ahead of them to look for coconuts. And while he was away, the doctor and the rest of the animals, who did not know the jungle paths so well, got lost
in the deep woods. They wandered around and around, but could not find their way down to the seashore. Chi-Chi, when he could not see them anywhere, was terribly upset. He climbed high trees and looked out from the top branches to try and see the doctor's high hat. He waved and shouted. He called to all the animals by name, but it was no use. They seemed to have disappeared altogether. Indeed, they had lost their way very badly. They had strayed a long way off the path, and the jungle was so thick with bushes and creepers and vines that sometimes they could hardly move at all, and the doctor had to take out his pocket-knife and cut his way along. They stumbled into wet, boggy places. They got all tangled up in thick, convolvulus runners. They scratched themselves on thorns, and twice they nearly lost the medicine bag in the underbrush. There seemed no end to their troubles, and nowhere could they come upon a path. At last, after blundering about like this for many days, getting their clothes torn and their faces covered with mud, they walked right into the king's back garden by mistake. The king's men came running up at once and caught them. But Polynesia flew into a tree in the garden without anybody seeing her, and hid herself. The doctor and the rest were taken before the king. "Ha ha!" cried the king. "So you are caught again. This time you shall not escape. Take them all back to prison, and put double locks on the door. This white man shall scrub my kitchen floor for the rest of his life." So the doctor and his pets were led back to prison and locked up, and the doctor was told that in the morning he must begin scrubbing the kitchen floor. They were all very unhappy. "This is a great nuisance," said the doctor. "I really must get back to Paddleby. That poor sailor will think I've stolen his ship if I don't get home soon. I wonder if those hinges are loose." But the door was very strong and firmly locked. There seemed no chance of getting out. Then Gub-Gub began to cry again. All this time Polynesia was still sitting in the tree in the palace garden. She was saying nothing and blinking her eyes. This was always a very bad sign with Polynesia. Whenever she said nothing and blinked her eyes, it meant that somebody had been making trouble, and she was thinking out some way to put things right. People who made trouble for Polynesia or her friends were nearly always sorry for it afterwards. Presently she spied Chi-Chi swinging through the trees, still looking for the doctor. When Chi-Chi saw her, he came into her tree and asked her what had become of him. The doctor and all the animals had been caught by the king's men and locked up again, whispered Polynesia. We lost our way in the jungle and blundered into the palace garden by mistake. But couldn't you guide them? Asked Chi-Chi, and he began to scold the parrot for letting them get lost while he was away looking for the coconuts. "It was all that stupid pig's fault," said Polynesia. "He would keep running off the path hunting for ginger roots, and I was kept so busy catching him and bringing him back, that I turned to the left instead of the right when we reached the swamp. Shh! Look! There's Prince Bumpo coming into the garden. He must not see us. Don't move, whatever you do." And there, sure enough, was Prince Bumpo, the king's son, opening the garden gate. He carried a book of fairy tales under his arm. He came strolling down the gravel walk, humming a sad song, till he reached a stone seat right under the tree where the parrot and the monkey were hiding. Then he lay down on the seat and began reading the fairy stories to himself. Chi-Chi and Polynesia watched him, keeping very quiet and still. After a while, the king's son laid the book down and sighed a weary sigh. "If I were only a white prince," said he, with a dreamy, faraway look in his eyes. Then the parrot, talking in a small, high voice like a little girl, said aloud, "Bumpo, someone might turn thee into a white prince perchance." The king's son started up off the seat and looked all around. "What is this I hear?" he cried. "Methought the sweet music of a fairy's silver voice rang from yonder bower. Strange!" "Worthy prince," said Polynesia, keeping very still so Bumpo couldn't see her, "thou sayest winged words of truth, for 'tis I, Trimsitinka, the queen of the fairies, that speak to thee. I am hiding in a rosebud." "Oh, tell me, fairy queen," cried Bumpo, clasping his hands in joy, "who is it can turn me white?" "In thy father's prison," said the parrot, "there lies a famous wizard, John Dolittle by name. Many things he knows of medicine and magic, and mighty deeds has he performed. Yet thy kindly father leaves him languishing long and lingering hours. Go to him, brave Bumpo, secretly when the sun has set, and behold, thou shalt be made the whitest prince that ever won fair lady. I have said enough. I must go back to Fairyland. Farewell." "Farewell," cried the prince. "A thousand thanks, good Tripsitinka," and he sat down on the seat again with a smile upon his face, waiting for the sun to set. End of the 11th chapter. The 12th chapter, titled Medicine and Magic. Very, very quietly, making sure that no one should see her, Polynesia then slipped out at the back of the tree and flew across to the prison. She found Gub-Gub poking his nose through the bars of the window, trying to sniff the cooking smells that came from the palace kitchen. She told the pig to bring the doctor to the window because she wanted to speak to him. So Gub-Gub went and woke the doctor, who was taking a nap. "Listen," whispered the parrot when John Dolittle's face appeared. "Prince Bumpo is coming here tonight to see you, and you've got to find some way to turn him white. But be sure to make him promise you first that he will open the prison door and find a ship for you to cross the sea in." "This is all very well," said the doctor, "but it isn't so easy to turn a black man white. You speak as though he were dressed to be re-dyed. It is not so simple. Shall the leopard change his spots, or the Ethiopian his skin? You know?" "I don't know anything about that," said Polynesia impatiently, "but you must turn this man white. Think of a way. Think hard. You've got plenty of medicines left in the bag. He'll do anything for you if you change his color. It is your only chance to get out of prison." "Well, I suppose it might be possible," said the doctor. "Let me see." And he went over to his medicine bag, murmuring something about liberated chlorine on animal pigment, perhaps zinc ointment as temporary measure, spread thick. Well, that night Prince Bumpo came secretly to the doctor in prison and said to him, "White man, I am an unhappy prince. Years ago I went in search of the Sleeping Beauty whom I have read of in a book, and having travelled through the world many days, I at last found her and kissed her, the lady, very gently to awaken her, as the book said I should. 'Tis true indeed that she awoke, but when she saw my face, she cried out, 'Oh, he's black!' and she ran away and wouldn't marry me, but went to sleep again somewhere else. So I came back, full of sadness, to my father's kingdom. Now I hear you are a wonderful magician and have some powerful potions, so I come to you for help. If you will turn me white, so that I may go back to the Sleeping Beauty, I will give you half my kingdom and anything besides you ask." "Prince Bumpo," said the doctor, looking thoughtfully at the bottles in his medicine bag, "supposing I made your hair a nice blonde color, would not that do instead to make you happy?" "No," said Bumpo, "nothing else will satisfy me. I must be a white prince." "You know it is very hard to change the color of a prince," said the doctor. "One of the hardest things a magician can do. You only want your face white, do you not?" "Yes, that is all," said Bumpo, "because I shall wear shiny armor and gauntlets of steel, like the other white princes, and ride on a horse." "Must your face be white all over?" asked the doctor. "Yes, all over," said Bumpo, "and I would like my eyes blue too, but I suppose that would be very hard to do." "Yes, it would," said the doctor quickly. "Well, I will do what I can for you. You will have to be very patient, though. You know, with some medicines you can never be very sure. I might have to try 2 or 3 times. You have a strong skin, yes? Well, that's all right. Now come over here by the light. Oh, but before I do anything, you must first go down to the beach and get a ship ready, with food in it, to take me across the sea. Do not speak a word of this to anyone, and when I have done as you ask, You must let me and all my animals out of prisons. Promise, by the crown of Jolliginki." So the prince promised and went away to get the ship ready at the seashore. When he came back and said that it was done, the doctor asked Dab-Dab to bring a basin. Then he mixed a lot of medicines in the basin and told Bumpo to dip his face in it. The prince leaned down and put his face in, right up to the ears. He held it there a long time, so long that the doctor seemed to get dreadfully anxious and fidgety, standing first on one leg and then on the other, looking at all the bottles he had used for the mixture, and reading the labels on them again and again. A strong smell filled the prison, like the smell of brown paper burning. At last the prince lifted his face up out of the basin, breathing very hard, and all the animals cried out in surprise. For the prince's face had turned as white as snow, and his eyes, which had been mud-colored, were a manly grey. When John Dolittle lent him a little looking-glass to see himself in, he sang for joy and began dancing around the prison. But the doctor asked him not to make so much noise about it, and when he had closed his medicine bag in a hurry, he told him to open the prison door. Bumpo begged that he might keep the looking-glass, as it was the only one in the kingdom of Jolliginki, and he wanted to look at himself all day long. But the doctor said he needed it to shave with. Then the prince, taking a bunch of copper keys from his pocket, undid the great double locks, and the doctor with all his animals ran as fast as they could down to the seashore, while Bumpo leaned against the wall of the empty dungeon, smiling after them happily, his big face shining like polished ivory in the light of the moon. When they came to the beach, they saw Polynesia and Chi-Chi waiting for them on the rocks near the ship. "I feel sorry about Bumpo," said the doctor. "I am afraid that medicine I used will never last. Most likely he will be as black as ever when he wakes up in the morning. That's one reason why I didn't like to leave the mirror with him. But then again, he might stay white. I have never used that mixture before. To tell the truth, I was surprised myself that it worked so well. But I had to do something, didn't I? I couldn't possibly scrub the king's kitchen for the rest of my life. It was such a dirty kitchen. I could see it from the prison window. Well, well, poor Bumpo." "Oh, of course he will know we were just joking with him," said the parrot. "They had no business to lock us up," said Dab-Dab, waggling her tail angrily. "We never did them any harm. Serve him right if he does turn black again. I hope it's a dark black." "But he didn't have anything to do with it," said the doctor. "It was the king, his father, who had us locked up. It wasn't Bumpo's fault." I wonder if I ought to go back and apologize. "Oh, well, I'll send him some candy when we get to Puddleby, and who knows, he may stay white after all. The Sleeping Beauty would never have him, even if he did," said Dab-Dab. "He looked better the way he was, I thought. But he'd never be anything but ugly, no matter what color he was made. Still, he had a good heart, said the doctor. Romantic, of course, but a good heart. After all, handsome is as handsome does. I don't believe the poor booby found the Sleeping Beauty at all, said Jip the dog. Most likely he kissed some farmer's fat wife who was taking a snooze under an apple tree. Can't blame her for getting scared. I wonder who he'll go and kiss this time. Silly business. Then the push-me-pull-you, the white mouse, Gob-Gob, Dab-Dab, Jip, and the owl Too-Too went on to the ship with the doctor. But Chee-Chee, Polynesia, and the crocodile stayed behind, because Africa was their proper home, the land where they were born. And when the doctor stood upon the boat, he looked over the side across the water, and then he remembered that they had no one with them to guide them back to Puddleby. The wide, wide sea looked terribly big and lonesome in the moonlight, and he began to wonder if they would lose their way when they passed out of sight of land. But even while he was wondering, they heard a strange whispering noise high in the air, coming through the night, and the animals all stopped saying goodbye and listened. The noise grew louder and bigger. It seemed to be coming nearer to them, a sound like the autumn wind blowing through the leaves of a poplar tree, or a great, great rain beating down upon a roof. And Jip, with his nose pointing and his tail quite straight, said, "Birds! Millions of them, flying fast, that's it." And then they all looked up, and there, streaming across the face of the moon, like a huge swarm of tiny ants, they could see thousands and thousands of little birds. Soon the whole sky seemed full of them, and still more kept coming, more and more. There were so many that for a little they covered the whole moon, so it could not shine, and the sea grew dark and black, like when a storm cloud passes over the sun. And presently all these birds came down close, skimming over the water and the land, and the night sky was left clear above, and the moon shone as before. Still never a call nor a cry nor a song they made, no sound but this great rustling of feathers which grew greater now than ever. When they began to settle on the sands, along the ropes of the ship, anywhere and everywhere except the trees, the doctor could see that they had blue wings and wide breasts and very short feather legs. As soon as they had all found a place to sit, suddenly there was no noise left anywhere. All was quiet, all was still. And in the silent moonlight John Dolittle spoke. "I had no idea that we had been in Africa so long. It will be nearly summer when we get home. For these are the swallows going back. Swallows, I thank you for waiting for us. It is very thoughtful of you. Now we need not be afraid that we will lose our way upon the sea. Pull up the anchor and set the sail." When the ship moved out upon the water, those who stayed behind, Chee-Chee, Polynesia, and the crocodile, grew terribly sad. for never in their lives had they known anyone they liked so well as Dr. John Dolittle of Pileby-on-the-Marsh. And after they had called good-bye to him again and again and again, they still stood there upon the rocks, crying bitterly and waving till the ship was out of sight. End of the 12th chapter. The 13th chapter, titled Red Sails and Blue Wings. Sailing homeward, the doctor's ship had to pass the coast of Barbary. This coast is the seashore of the great desert. It is a wild, lonely place, all sand and stones, and it was here that the Barbary pirates lived. These pirates, a bad lot of men, used to wait for sailors to be shipwrecked on their shores, and often, if they saw a boat passing, they would come out in their fast-sailing ships and chase it. When they caught a boat like this at sea, they would steal everything on it, and after they had taken the people off, they would sink the ship and sail back to Barbary, singing songs and feeling proud of the mischief they had done. Then they used to make the people they had caught write home to their friends for money, and if the friends sent no money, the pirates often threw the people into the sea. Now one sunshiny day, the doctor and Dab-Dab were walking up and down on the ship for exercise. A nice fresh wind was blowing the boat along, and everybody was happy. Presently Dab-Dab saw the sail of another ship a long way behind them on the edge of the sea. It was a red sail. "I don't like the look of that sail," said Dab-Dab. "I have a feeling it isn't a friendly ship. I am afraid there is more trouble coming to us." Jip, who was lying near taking a nap in the sun, began to growl and talk in his sleep. "I smell roast beef cooking," he mumbled. "Underdone roast beef, with brown gravy over it." "Good gracious!" cried the doctor. "What's the matter with the dog? Is he smelling in his sleep, as well as talking?" "I suppose he is," said Dab-Dab. "All dogs can smell in their sleep." "But what is he smelling?" asked the doctor. "There is no roast beef cooking on our ship." "No," said Dab-Dab. "The roast beef must be on that other ship over there." "But that's 10 miles away," said the doctor. "He couldn't smell that far, surely." "Oh, yes, he could," said Dab-Dab. "You ask him." Then Jip, still fast asleep, began to growl again, and his lip curled up angrily, showing his clean white teeth. "I smell bad men," he growled. "The worst men I ever smelled. I smell trouble. I smell a fight. 6 bad scoundrels fighting against one brave man. I want to help him. Woof, woo, woof!" Then he barked loud and woke himself up with a surprised look on his face. "See!" cried Dab-Dab. "That boat is nearer now. You can count its 3 big sails, all red. Whoever it is, they're coming after us. I wonder who they are." "They are bad sailors," said Jip, "and their ship is very swift. They are surely the pirates of Barbary." "Well, we must put up more sails on our boat," said the doctor, "so we can go faster and get away from them. "Run downstairs, Jip, and fetch me all the sails you see." The dog hurried downstairs and dragged up every sail he could find. But even when all these were put up on the mast to catch the wind, the boat did not go nearly as fast as the pirates, which kept coming on behind, closer and closer. "This is a poor ship the prince gave us," said Gub-Gub the pig. "The slowest he could find, I should think. Might as well try to win a race in a soup tureen as hope to get away from them in this old barge. Look how near they are now. You can see the mustaches on the faces of the men, 6 of them. What are we going to do?" Then the doctor asked Dab-Dab to fly up and tell the swallows that pirates were coming after them in a swift ship, and what should he do about it? When the swallows heard this, they all came down onto the doctor's ship, and they told him to unravel some pieces of long rope and make them into a lot of thin strings as quickly as he could. Then the ends of these strings were tied onto the front of the ship, and the swallows took hold of the strings with their feet and flew off, pulling the boat along. And although swallows are not very strong when only 1 or 2 are by themselves, it is different when there are a great lot of them together. And there, tied to the doctor's ship, were 1,000 strings, and 2,000 swallows were pulling on each string, all terribly swift flyers. And in a moment the doctor found himself traveling so fast he had to hold his hat on with both hands, for he felt as though the ship itself were flying through waves that frothed and boiled with speed. And all the animals on the ship began to laugh and dance about in the rushing air. For when they looked back at the pirate's ship, they could see that it was growing smaller now, instead of bigger. The red sails were being left far, far behind. End of the 13th chapter. The 14th chapter, titled The Rat's Warning. Dragging a ship through the sea is hard work, and after 2 or 3 hours the swallows began to get tired in the wings and short of breath. Then they sent a message down to the doctor to say that they would have to take a rest soon, and that they would pull the boat over to an island not far off, and hide it in a deep bay till they had got breath enough to go on. And presently the doctor saw the island they had spoken of. It had a very beautiful high green mountain in the middle of it. When the ship had sailed safely into the bay, where it could not be seen from the open sea, the doctor said he would get off onto the island to look for water, because there was none left to drink on his ship. And he told all the animals to get out too, and romp on the grass to stretch their legs. Now, as they were getting off, the doctor noticed that a whole lot of rats were coming up from downstairs and leaving the ship as well. Jip started to run after them, because chasing rats have always been his favorite game, but the doctor told him to stop. And one big black rat, who seemed to want to say something to the doctor, now crept forward timidly along the rail, watching the dog out of the corner of his eye. And after he had coughed nervously 2 or 3 times, and cleaned his whiskers, and wiped his mouth, he said, "Ahem, you know, of course, that all ships have rats in them, Doctor, do you not?" And the doctor said, "Yes." "And you have heard that rats always leave a sinking ship?" "Yes," said the doctor, "so I've been told." "People," said the rat, "always speak of it with a sneer, as though it were something disgraceful. But you can't blame us, can you? After all, who would stay on a sinking ship if he could get off it?" "It's very natural," said the doctor. "Very natural. I quite understand. Was there anything else you wished to say?" "Yes," said the rat. "I've come to tell you that we're leaving this one, but we wanted to warn you before we go. This is a bad ship you have here. It isn't safe. The sides aren't strong enough. Its boards are rotten. Before tomorrow night it will sink to the bottom of the sea." "But how do you know?" asked the doctor. "We always know," answered the rat. "The tips of our tails get that tingly feeling like when your foot's asleep. This morning at 6 o'clock, while I was getting breakfast, my tail suddenly began to tingle. At first I thought it was my rheumatism coming back, so I went and asked my aunt how she felt. You remember her? The long, piebald rat, rather skinny, who came to see you in Paddleby last spring with jaundice. Well, and she said her tail was tingling like everything. Then we knew for sure that this boat was going to sink in less than 2 days, and we all made up our minds to leave it as soon as we got near enough to any land. It's a bad ship, Doctor. Don't sail in it any more, or you'll be surely drowned. Goodbye. We are now going to look for a good place to live on this island." "Goodbye," said the doctor, "and thank you very much for coming to tell me. Very considerate of you, very. Give my regards to your aunt. I remember her perfectly. Leave that rat alone, Jip. Come here. Lie down." So then the doctor and all his animals went off, carrying pails and saucepans, to look for water on the island, while the swallows took their rest. "I wonder what is the name of this island," said the doctor as he was climbing up the mountain side. "It seems a pleasant place. What a lot of birds there are!" "Why, these are the Canary Islands," said Dab-Dab. "Don't you hear the canaries singing?" The doctor stopped and listened. "Why, to be sure, of course," he said. "How stupid of me! I wonder if they can tell us where to find water." And presently the canaries, who had heard all about Dr. Dolittle from birds of passage, came and led him to a beautiful spring of cool, clear water, where the canaries used to take their bath, and they showed him lovely meadows where the bird seed grew, and all the other sides of their island. And the Push-me-pull-you was glad they had come, because he liked the green grass so much better than the dried apples he had been eating on the ship, and Gub-Gub squeaked for joy when he found a whole valley full of wild sugar-cane. A little later, when they had all had plenty to eat and drink, and were lying on their backs while the canaries sang for them, two of the swallows came hurrying up, very flustered and excited. "Doctor," they cried, "the pirates have come into the bay, and they've all got onto your ship. They are downstairs looking for things to steal. They have left their own ship with nobody on it. If you hurry and come down to the shore, you can get onto their ship, which is very fast, and escape, but you'll have to hurry." "That's a good idea," said the doctor. "Splendid." And he called his animals together at once, said goodbye to the canaries, and ran down to the beach. When they reached the shore, they saw the pirate ship, with the 3 red sails standing in the water, and, just as the swallows had said, there was nobody on it. All the pirates were downstairs in the doctor's ship, looking for things to steal. So John Dolittle told his animals to walk very softly, and they all crept onto the pirate ship. End of the 14th chapter.